In a small, forgotten village nestled at the base of the misty Elarian mountains, there stood an ancient tree, towering over the surrounding forest like a guardian of time. This tree, known as the Whispering Oak, was unlike any other. Its trunk was so wide that 10 people holding hands could barely encircle it, and its branches stretched so high they seemed to touch the clouds. Its roots dug deep into the earth, rumored to reach the core of the world itself. The villagers revered the Whispering Oak, believing it held the wisdom of the ages. Generations had passed down stories of its whispers, tales of people who had come seeking answers and left with profound understanding. It was said that those who dared to sit beneath its shade and truly listened could hear the whispers of the tree, a soft voice carried on the wind, offering guidance and answers to those who sought them. Yet, for all its fame, very few had actually heard the whispers. The elders believed this was because people no longer had the patience to truly listen. They were always rushing, always wanting answers right away. But this was not the case for young Kieran. Kieran was a 13-year-old boy with a restless mind and an insatiable curiosity that set him apart from the other children in the village. While the others were content playing games by the river or helping their parents with chores, Kieran spent his days asking questions about the stars that blinked in the night sky, the rivers that flowed endlessly, and the winds that carried secrets from distant lands. His questions often exasperated the elders who would say, "Kieran, your head is always in the clouds." But Kieran couldn't help it. He felt a deep yearning to understand the mysteries of the world, and more than anything, he wondered about the Whispering Oak. He had heard countless stories about it from his grandmother, who told him about people who had been transformed by the tree's wisdom. One day, after yet another disagreement with his mother about why he should be focusing on practical things like fishing, farming, and helping around the house, Kieran made a decision. He needed answers. He needed to know if the tales of the Whispering Oak were true. So, he packed a small satchel with bread, cheese, a flask of water, and announced to his family that he was going to the Whispering Oak. His mother's face turned pale. "The oak is not a place for children," she warned. "It speaks in riddles, and not all who seek its wisdom find what they want." Kieran smiled, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "I'm not looking for what I want, Mother," he replied. "I'm looking for what I need." With that, he left his home and headed down the winding path that led deep into the forest, towards the ancient tree. As he walked, he felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. The stories he had heard made the Whispering Oak seem both wondrous and intimidating. Would it speak to him? Would he hear its whispers? Would he understand? The path to the Whispering Oak was long and winding, cutting through dense woods and crossing a small brook where the water sang against the rocks. The closer Kieran got, the more he felt the forest itself seemed to quiet. The birds ceased their singing, the insects their buzzing, as if nature itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Finally, Kieran reached a clearing, and there it was, the Whispering Oak, standing like a giant among giants. The tree's massive trunk shimmered with a silver hue that seemed to change with the light, and its leaves rustled gently, as if whispering secrets only the wind could hear. Kieran approached the tree slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel a strange energy in the air, like an invisible hum that made the hairs on his arms stand up. He sat down cross-legged beneath its vast canopy, closed his eyes and whispered softly into the stillness. "Oh, Whispering Oak, if you are truly wise, tell me what I need to know." For a long while, there was nothing, just the sound of the wind moving through the leaves. Kieran opened his eyes, a bit disappointed, wondering if he had been foolish to believe in the old tales. But just as he was about to stand up, a soft breeze brushed against his face, and he heard it, a voice so gentle it was almost like a sigh saying, "To find wisdom, one must first embrace patience." Kieran frowned. Patience? He had come all this way for that. He had wanted something more, a secret that would change his life, something that would make him special. But he had always been taught to respect his elders and the whispers of the oak. So he nodded and decided he would wait, just as the oak had instructed. Days turned into weeks, and each morning Kieran returned to the Whispering Oak, sitting under its shade, listening intently. At first, he was restless. His mind wandered to other thoughts, and he found it hard to focus on just being still. But gradually, something changed. He began to notice the small things, the way the dew clung to the leaves in the early morning, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the first light of dawn. He watched the intricate patterns made by the ants as they climbed up and down the tree trunk, carrying bits of leaves and twigs. He listened to the wind as it danced through the branches, carrying with it the scent of pine, earth, and the promise of rain. He listened to the chatter of the squirrels, the songs of the birds, and the rustle of leaves under the small creatures that called the forest home. One afternoon, as Kieran was sitting in his usual spot, he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Elara, the village healer, standing there with a warm smile on her wrinkled face. Elara was known throughout the village not just for her knowledge of herbs and remedies, but for her wisdom and gentle guidance. She had a way of making even the most stubborn villagers see sense with just a few words. "What brings you here every day, young Kieran?" she asked. Kieran shrugged, a bit embarrassed. "I came to hear the wisdom of the Whispering Oak," he replied. "But all it has told me is to be patient." Elara chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling. "And have you been patient?" Kieran nodded. "I think so. But I still haven't heard anything else." Elara sat beside him under the tree, her hands resting on her knees. "Wisdom isn't always in what is said, Kieran," she murmured. "Sometimes, it's in what you learn when nothing is said at all." Kieran tilted his head, thinking about her words. "What have you learned while you waited?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "I've learned to see, to really see. Not just the big things, but the little things too. I've learned to listen, not just with my ears, but with my heart. I feel like I understand more than I did before." Elara smiled. "And that, my dear, is wisdom. To truly see, to truly listen, to understand what is not immediately clear, that is where true knowledge begins." After his conversation with Elara, Kieran's visits to the Whispering Oak took on new meaning. He no longer sat with impatience or expectation. Instead, he allowed himself to simply be, to observe, and to listen in a different way. He noticed how the trees seemed to pulse with life, how its bark seemed to breathe in the moonlight, how its leaves danced with the rhythm of the wind. Kieran began to understand that wisdom wasn't something that could be forced or demanded. It had to be earned through quiet observation and deep reflection. He realized that the world was full of lessons, not just from the Whispering Oak, but from every leaf, every bird, every breath of wind. He saw the interconnections between all things, the delicate balance of life that held everything in harmony. Elara would often join him in his silent vigils, and they would sit together in companionable silence. Occasionally, she would share a story or a thought, something that deepened Kieran's understanding or made him see things from a new perspective. But mostly they just sat and listened, to the tree, to the world, to their own thoughts. One day, Elara spoke softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Kieran, wisdom is not just about knowing. It is about feeling, about understanding with your heart, about living in a way that brings peace and clarity to yourself and others. Do you understand?" Kieran nodded slowly, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "I think I'm starting to," he replied. That evening, a fierce storm rolled over the mountains. Lightning crackled across the sky, and the wind howled through the village like a wild beast. The villagers huddled in their homes, securing shutters and doors, but Kieran could not keep his eyes from the direction of the Whispering Oak. He felt a pull, a need to be there, even in the raging storm. Grabbing his cloak, he dashed into the rain, his mother calling after him in fear. But Kieran felt something deep within him, urging him forward. He ran through the mud and the wind, his feet slipping, his clothes soaked through. When he finally reached the clearing, he saw Elara standing there, calm and composed, her arms spread wide as if she were embracing the storm itself. "Kieran," she called out over the howling wind, "do not fear the storm. Feel it. Embrace it. Understand it." Kieran stood beside her, his heart racing, his breath coming in short gasps. He placed his hand on the trunk of the Whispering Oak, and for a moment, he thought he felt the tree's heartbeat, a steady, calming rhythm amidst the chaos. He closed his eyes, feeling the rain on his face, the wind tugging at his clothes, and the deep resonant hum of the oak beneath his hand. Then, he heard the whisper again, clearer this time. Wisdom is not in avoiding the storm, but in learning to dance in the rain. From that moment on, Kieran began to understand what the whispering oak had been teaching him all along. Wisdom wasn't about finding the right answers, or even about asking the right questions. It was about living fully, embracing every experience, every joy, and every sorrow. It was about finding peace in the midst of chaos, learning to see clearly in the middle of confusion, and standing firm even when the winds of life blew fiercely. He realized that every moment had something to teach him, that every experience was an opportunity to grow and understand. The oak had been guiding him gently, showing him that wisdom was not in the grand gestures or the loud proclamations, but in the quiet moments of reflection and understanding. Kieran continued his daily visits to the whispering oak, but his approach had changed. He no longer sought to hear the whispers. Instead, he sought to learn from the world around him. The seasons passed, and as they did, Kieran grew into a young man, known throughout the village for his thoughtfulness and calm demeanor. He became someone people sought out for advice, not because he had all the answers, but because he listened deeply and spoke from the heart. His reputation spread beyond the village, and travelers began to come, seeking the wisdom of the young man who had learned from the whispering oak. Kieran welcomed them all, sharing with them not the secrets of the tree, but the lessons he had learned, lessons of patience, observation, and understanding. One day, a traveler arrived, weary and troubled, his face lined with worry. He had heard of Kieran, and came hoping for answers to his many problems. Kieran invited him to sit under the shade of the whispering oak, and they spoke for hours. The traveler poured out his heart, sharing his troubles, his fears, his confusion. Kieran listened patiently, nodding occasionally, his expression calm and kind. When the traveler had finished, he asked, "What do you think I should do?" Kieran smiled gently. "I believe that wisdom isn't something you find, but something you live," he said softly. "It's not about having all the answers, but about embracing every challenge, every joy, and every sorrow as a lesson. Sometimes, the answer lies not in knowing, but in living." The traveler left that day, his heart lighter, his mind clearer. He hadn't found the answers he had sought, but he had found something more, a sense of peace, a new perspective on his journey, and a deeper understanding of himself. As decades passed, Kieran aged gracefully, his hair turning silver like the leaves of the oak, his face lined with the wisdom of years. The whispering oak continued to stand tall, its branches reaching for the sky, its roots digging deeper into the earth, a silent guardian of wisdom. People from far and wide continued to visit, hoping to hear its whispers, but many discovered, like Kieran, that the real wisdom came not from the tree's whispers, but from their own journey, their own patience, their own willingness to learn from every moment. The whispering oak remained a silent teacher, a reminder that true wisdom is not always in the answers, but in the willingness to seek and learn, to listen and grow, and to find peace and strength in both the calm and the storm. And so, the legend of the whispering oak lived on, not just in the stories told around the village fires, but in the hearts and minds of all who had come, listened, and learned from its silent, unwavering presence.